Sekeres and Price, a special post-game edition, round 2, game 7. Edmonton Oilers 3, Vancouver Canucks 2. Edmonton wins this best-of-7 Western Conference playoff series 4-3. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things in this show, a presentation of Applewood Auto Group.
And Applewood Infinity in the Richmond Auto Mall has the 2024 Q50s with lease rates from 1.99% in this economy for 24 months. Plus, you get non-stack cash of $4,000 on all trims. Go ask them about it. Go take one for a test drive. It's the 2024 Q50s at the Applewood Infinity in the Richmond Auto Mall. It's all good at Applewood.
Well, Blake, the Game 7 trauma continues for fans of the Vancouver Canucks. 3 consecutive losses in Game 7. At least they got a goal in the third period.
Yes,
2 of them, actually, to make it more competitive and give us at least some drama and some intensity at the end there. They have still never beaten the Edmonton Oilers in a Stanley Cup playoff series. Now 0-3, and their 2024 Stanley Cup playoff run comes to an end in round 2 after 13 games. Your overall thoughts on what we saw tonight?
Well, I mean, they were the second best team in this game. They were the second best team in the series. So I think there's some just rewards there for the Oilers. Could it have gone differently? Yeah, I think it could have been. I mean, I don't know what the game plan was here, Matt. I don't know that I saw adjustments made by Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff, by the players. Obviously, score effects allows them to get certainly to the 3-1 goal. But you'd think that the Oilers would have clamped down a little bit better. Like, you just wonder why Game 5 Canucks and third period Canucks here couldn't have been a little bit more readily available to them. Their inability to get shots on goal, heck, when it's 3-0 in the third period and they still get 1v1 opportunities, albeit it's from guys like Phil DiGiuseppe, but you have to hit the net. And their inability to do that, their inability to get a power play goal and get a power play shot. I mean, those are user errors. You can point to Thatcher Demko. You would have asked Thatcher Demko to stand on his head, and that could have been possible. But ultimately, I think these problems were deeper than just Thatcher Demko not being in the net.
Yeah, I mean, I think outside of the goals from distance, which you think Thatcher Demko makes saves on those, I think Artur Shilovs gave you everything that you could have hoped for in goal for a rookie with so little NHL experience in the spot he was dropped in as the third goaltender to take the crease for the Vancouver Canucks in these playoffs. You mentioned the shots, Blake, 2 in the first period, 5 in the third period when you're trailing by 3 goals. Look, it was a bad omen pregame when that huge rolled out Canucks flag winds up upside down in the pregame ceremony. You followed the Canucks in their tortured history, and you see that, you just think to yourself, oh, don't like the looks of this.
No.
Blake, 270 shots in 13 playoff games. It averages out to 20.76 shots. That is last in the National Hockey League of the 16 teams that made the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Man, I'm amazed it's that. I'm amazed it's above 20. I really am. It doesn't feel like it should be.
I was going to say, Blake, we talked about it on the Daily Show today, that not only were they last in the Stanley Cup playoffs for shots on goal, but they were a full 3.5 shots, 3.7 shots actually, shy of the next worst team. I mean, you take a look, the Carolina Hurricanes shoot from everywhere. They typically lead in shots on goal, but they average nearly 36 shots per game. The Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final, 33 shots per game. I mean, that's like a full period's more worth of work than what the Vancouver Canucks were averaging. And look, I think Rick Tocchet has done an extraordinary job this year. He should win the Jack Adams going away, and I've been joking during this series with the way they've held McDavid in check, and really, they hold Connor McDavid in check again tonight. That he was, the top of my Conn Smythe trophy list, the way the coaching tactics were working against the Oilers superstar. But I do think there's room for criticism here tonight of Tocchet and the coaching staff. And look, I think he gets caught up in an old coaching mistake, and that is relying too much on your identity and not adapting to the opponent's weaknesses. He said earlier in the series he wasn't concerned about shots. They very much coach quality over quantity, Blake. And I think in this series against two wide-eyed goaltenders, Calvin Pickard, the 2 games he played, and then Stuart Skinner coming back here in game 6 and game 7, given where his emotions and psyche were, I just think it was the wrong approach. I think you needed to throw pucks on goal, see how these two fragile Edmonton goaltenders would have responded. And frankly, they didn't. It wasn't enough shots in the series for sure, but it certainly wasn't enough shots in the final 4 games when you had these two goaltenders who were so very gettable.
There was some chiding remarks from some of the players over the course of the playoffs of, we're not going to just skate over the blue line and take a shot. I don't think that's what anybody's talking about. You know, there is a happy medium between that and what they did. And they refused to take any shot that just didn't present itself as a 5-alarm opportunity. There was a play in the first period. Rebound comes out to JT Miller, and he's got an opportunity on his backhand to just reel off a blind backhand because the play was going left to right. And instinctively you think, okay, maybe not everybody's in place. Maybe I should backhand it. He didn't. He wanted to he calmed down, turned around, and started the play over again, allowing Edmonton to get back into place, settled into the defensive position. Sometimes you have to go by feel. Sometimes you have to be, and I'm sure, I'm not saying the JT Miller isn't the kind of player. I think JT Miller unhinged is going to make that backhand and try to get that puck towards net. But I think his coach is in his head saying, no, don't rush it. Don't do it. You know, get the best quality shot. And sometimes you need to break those rules. Sometimes you need to just put the puck towards net and see what happens, particularly in the frenetic pace that is the National Hockey League playoffs.
Yeah, let me correct myself. 35 shots in game 5. That was a 3-2 victory, but 21, 17, and 15 in the 3 games are around that. So
That's
just not enough. And especially, Blake, you know, after game 6, like, you lost your best finisher for this game in Brock Besser. So to rely on quality shots when you were already a winger or 2 short going into this series, and then you were a 3rd winger short when Brock Besser had the blood clotting issue, like, these guys are not going to finish the percentage of chances that you were finishing at the beginning of the year. So
Sam Lafferty and PDG are a perfect example of that.
Exactly. They're missing opportunities. Exactly. You're wide open and you're not even getting the puck on goal. So I think Talkin and the coaching staff are going to kick themselves over the summer for not adapting again. I think your opponent's weakness was greater than what your strength of identity was, and that was, you know, working hard, keeping possession of the puck as a defensive tactic as much as an offensive tactic, and trying to find those perfect shots, those high quality, high danger opportunities, when really I think you had a couple of wounded animals in the Edmonton goal that you would have done better against had you thrown a ton of rubber on net and tried to score those ugly, greasy playoff goals that perhaps bank off something, deflect off something, or sit there in the low crease, in the low slaughter crease for bang home rebounds and that sort of thing.
Unless we see different Stuart Skinner in the conference final, Stuart Skinner is going to break the Oilers fans' hearts. That's not a goaltender that's going to take you to the promised land. His save percentage tonight was 88.
Yeah.
And that's the high water mark for him. Like, imagine if you got more rubber on him, what that looks like for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
And hey, they are to blame on a number of levels. We've already covered coaching and maybe some double clutching. There's also the fanning of the puck. There was 3 or 4 in the slot opportunities for the Vancouver Canucks. Lindholm most notably, but others as well, where they, like, literally they just cannot shoot the puck. It is peewee level fumbling of the, like, what do you do? Like, Lindholm's been amazing in these playoffs. He's got the puck the middle of the circles and he can't execute a shot. What do you do? Like, it's just the world's conspiring against you at that point, right?
A few other things in this series that I think bear noting at this stage of the game. JPAT had it, but the number of goals that the Edmonton Oilers got from their defense core this series was a very big turning point. I mean, they're on the board again. It's 9 goals from defense, if I'm not mistaken, that Edmonton gets in this series. I mean, Cody Ceci has a couple. And in fact, at one point it was 10 before they credited Zach Hyman with the tip on the Evan Bouchard goal. So the Oilers got goals from defense in greater numbers than the Vancouver Canucks did, and Quinn Hughes goes without a goal in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think it's also got to be said that Evan Bouchard, the young Oilers defenseman, he outplayed his counterpart, the likely Norris Trophy winner Quinn Hughes in this series. He was the best blue liner of the bunch, either team. And, you know, for the Vancouver Canucks, if you're going to give up that many goals to the opposing team's defense corps, particularly when they have who they have up front, and have their best rear guard be better than your Norris Trophy guy, that was going to be difficult to overcome.
And a lot of that's power play, right? I mean, the Canucks had more than enough power play opportunities tonight to execute and get at least one power play goal, and maybe that's a tie game. Maybe that changes the entire course. But Bouchard, in
0 for 14, Blake. They end this series 0 for 14 on the power play. And look, the 4-minute high sticking double minor early in the game where Pettersson gets cut. You know, that's something that you just, on Ryan McLeod, that's something that you just have to take advantage of.
You have to.
Once again, it's the Vancouver Canucks power play simply not being able to gain the zone, and it just destroys whatever momentum that the team has. It actually, it sags the team.
Well,
you can see the bench sagging.
How it went down.
When these power plays go down as miserably as they've gone down.
Matt, if it was frenetic activity and Skinner is standing on his head, but there were 7 shots over the 4 minutes and you come up empty-handed, I don't think you're that dejected. You're like, holy cow, We're swarming them, but we're going to get them. We got 45 minutes left here. Let's get them. Or 50 minutes, whatever it was. But like they couldn't enter the zone. They looked hapless. And I think, honestly, that was the kick in the nuts that took them, you know, 2 periods to recover from. Like it was so dejecting for them to not be able. Like, did they get set up in the 4 minutes?
I'm not sure they did, Blake, and they gave up a shorthanded breakaway. And good thing it was Connor Brown, or otherwise that could have been in your net, and even more of a deflating power play than it was. Look, the power play coaching this year was 1 part Rick Tocchet, 1 part Mike Yeo, with lots of feedback from the players. I would have to think that you're going to have a more traditional sort of power play setup next year with a specific coach who's responsible for it. We were joking in the Nation Network studio. Newell Brown is available. Blake, he won't be back.
Oh my
with
gosh.
the Anaheim Ducks. Maybe up for yet another tour in Vancouver if Travis Green doesn't hire him in Ottawa. But yes, a power play was the thing. And again, the Oilers score on the power play tonight. It is the best power play in NHL history over a few year period. They go 1 for 2. Vancouver goes 0 for 3. We said pregame, these two officials generally combine for about 6 power play opportunities every night they officiate. So they're right there at 5, and Edmonton gets 1. And just like earlier in the series when Edmonton's power play was so darn good, that makes the difference this evening. Goals from distance, you hate them. And boy, Sheloves was so good on many of those secondary Oilers chances where he's got to account for a second opportunity after making a save.
Or the 1v1s too, like the breakaways and stuff. Like, he was amazing.
The one thing is, this is not a goalie who's accustomed to NHL shots coming at him from distance with NHL traffic and NHL deflections. And I think that showed up over the course of this series as well. Nobody is blaming him. He had an extraordinary postseason for the Vancouver Canucks. I think he is very well instead as the backup next year. I was wondering, when we started these playoffs, Blake, we were wondering, Casey DeSmith, do you bring him back? What do you re-sign him to? I think the Canucks can feel assured that Artur Shelovs can be their backup goaltender next year and give them good play, and maybe even rest Thatcher Demko a little more than Demko has been rested previously in seasons previous. So look, a lot of things to like there going forward. The one thing you're going to have to worry about going forward, and I suspect we will spend a fair bit of the summer talking about this gentleman, Blake, Elias Pettersson, who was better again tonight. If you just want to talk about form, and he looked in the fight, but another night where he is not on the scoreboard. And really, did the Vancouver Canucks have a chance to beat the Edmonton Oilers if Elias Pettersson wasn't very good? And that was it was a very tall order to begin with, but it's a particularly tall order when one of your best players is nothing close to his regular self. He finishes with 1 goal and 3 points in the 7 games against Edmonton. Blake, he finishes the playoffs with 1 goal and 1 goal and 5 assists for 6 points in 13 games,
which seems like a lot. Honestly. That seems flattering. He had better get up and go. Really liked his play early on in the game. I thought the first period, especially, that was a motivated looking Elias Pettersson. Like the rest of the Canucks, I think they were all flat-footed in the second period. And then he got a little bit better in the third period again. But if you're not on the score sheet at this point, I feel really I feel like we're reducing our analysis if we applaud these last couple of games for Elias Pettersson.
It's a lower bar you're holding him to. Yes.
Him showing up and playing like a professional is not how we should be judging this player. We shouldn't be judging him alongside Phil DiGiuseppe. So we'll wait. And, if there's a massive injury in the next week that is revealed, then that will explain a lot.
Though, Blake, I don't think Rick Tocchet goes to the microphone and says what he says earlier in the postseason, saying, look, he's not injured. We don't lie to you. If there was something significant with Elias. I do believe Philip Hronek is injured. I believe he's got an elbow injury. I think you'll hear that come to light. I think Quinn Hughes is injured as well. It'll be interesting to see if any details come out on that. And look, missing Brock Besser tonight proves huge, right? Your best scorer, a one-shot guy, and all these opportunities as we go to the listeners and their feedback off our engagement post. Canucks Country Club says the lack of top-end talent really showed in this game. PDG, McKayev, and Lafferty having our best chances tonight, and whiffing is not a major surprise. And Jordan adds, imagine Jake Gensel was getting all those chances on PD's line instead of McKayev, PDG, and Lafferty. The Canucks knew they were at least one winger short, Blake. That's one of the reasons why they pursued Jake Gensel. It's one of the reasons why they pursued Jason Zucker at the trade deadline. Patrick Alvin explained at the end of the day that really they lost a bit of their nerve as traders. They didn't want to give up more of the future. Of course, they didn't have a lot of cap space, so they're going to have to get creative to make it work. They weren't able to get that winger that they knew they needed. Alvin sounded like a guy whose dog had died at trade deadline, because I think he knew. And it sure enough comes back to bite the Vancouver Canucks. Just the lack of finish off the flank for the 3 terrific centermen they have. One more winger in this series, and I do wonder if we're talking about the Canucks off to Dallas for the Western Conference Final.
I mean, that very well could be true. You have to sort of see how the rest of the universe unfolds. As it stands right now, if the Vancouver Canucks won this game, if they miraculously tie the game in the final minute there, win it in overtime, they're getting waxed by the Dallas Stars.
One would think.
Unless Thatcher Demko comes back and goalies the hell out of that series, which would be something to ask for, given he hasn't played in a month and a half. But this team is short on personnel. It is banged up, and it is already roster short to begin with. So, that's the one thing. As you lick your wounds from this here, Canucks fans, you weren't going much further. Dallas was going to deal with you. And it gives you an idea as Vancouver Canucks managers and owners to what needs to happen for next season. And there's a lot of work. Now, we got a lot of time to debrief what's going to happen over the course of the season. But we'll say this, Matt. One thing has also become certain over this playoff run. The players that you thought, oh my God, we got to give raises to here and there and there and him. Yeah. And so there's a lot fewer raises going out than originally intended.
Yeah. So Connor Garland has some really loud moments in this game and in the series, and he scores that goal to get them going tonight. And suddenly they got some juice. The building has some juice, and you're thinking, wow, maybe they're actually going to pull this off. It's his 3rd goal of the postseason, 13 games. Dakota Joshua also has some loud moments in the Stanley Cup playoffs, most of them in game one. Not good enough. That we talked about that line all year, Blake, as one of the best third lines in hockey, whether it was Teddy Bluger in the middle or Elias Lindholm later in the season. But part of what made them one of the better lines, third lines in hockey, was they brought it each and every night. The production wasn't always there. I can remember early in the season where we got, boy, they're playing well, but the production isn't there. Midway through the year, they had another, terrific stretch of play. Production wasn't really there, and eventually it showed up. I don't know if more production would have come here had the Stanley Cup playoff run continued, but just a low conversion percentage for that line. It's not good enough to play a hell of a game and then have a moment or two in the next game and the next game and the next game. So I don't necessarily feel like that line showed us its best in the playoffs. And look, they're relatively inexperienced players in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Connor Garland, it's a small guy. It is more difficult when the Stanley Cup playoffs come around and space is in high demand and isn't quite as attainable as it typically is. I mean, no one is blaming them in isolation, but you compound that with what you weren't getting from Elias Pettersson. And Blake, let's face it, JT Miller wasn't great here the last couple games either. In fact, JT Miller was very quiet tonight in what you thought would have been a spot for him to step up and try and grab this game by the horns.
I think he looked really tired. The want to me was there, but even late in the game with the goalie pulled, he's skating onto the end boards, and normally he's just a beast there. He's going to win the puck, and you could he had
trouble just holding on to the puck. Just stick handling the puck, keeping possession. So became an issue for him at the end. Anyways.
I mean, didn't have a lot of help. Didn't have guys coming up. I mean, you think about this at Christmas, man. Bluger, Joshua, Lafferty. Double-digit goals for Joshua and Lafferty early in the season. Bluger was just playing so well. You thought, man, you're going to have to give raises to all those guys. Philip Roenick, God, what is he worth? And even if Roenick comes out with an injury, like when is that injury happening? How long ago was this injury happening? Canucks are going to be in a very interesting spot here, and I don't think we thought they were over a barrel. Even as late as March 10th, it looked like the Canucks were over a barrel in the offseason to hold on to this magical division champion. I don't think that they necessarily feel that way anymore. I think there's a lot of learnings here. So we'll get into that throughout the course of the week.
Absolutely. We sure will. We'll get into that on the Daily Show on Tuesday and throughout the summer here. Now, recapping our Bet365 bets of the day, I had JT Miller as a goal scorer. I had him to score the first goal, so 0 for 2 there, partner. You had what?
I had Nikita Zadorov to score, and honestly, there was a couple of moments where I thought it was a good bet, especially late. He got really active. He got those crazy legs going. It didn't happen. That feed to Höglander that got tipped late. It was about 3 minutes to go. Oh, gosh. Anyway.
Höglander redeemed himself to the point where he's out there in the final minutes of the game. So it was nice to see him get a little better in the Stanley Cup playoffs as they went along, because he certainly had a rude awakening to the difference in hockey in the postseason earlier in the Nashville series and into the Edmonton series, where he winds up getting healthy scratched. The Oilers are plus 240 to win the cup now. They are the second choice, slightly behind Dallas at plus 230. So Bet365 certainly thinking that the Stanley Cup
is going through the West.
Comes out of the West. The Rangers are actually the fourth choice President's Trophy winners, but the fourth choice.
Somebody was just asking me about who the favorite is now, and I'm like, you know what? They're probably the least talented team maybe in the Rangers, but they've got the magic pixie dust on them right now. Like they've just got that certain moxie. Like that Florida should win the series, but that's maybe a good bet there on the Rangers.
And it doesn't get much easier for the Edmonton Oilers. We've been saying for some time, Blake, players of McDavid and Draisaitl's stature, particularly when they play together, tend to win Stanley Cups at some point in their life. There are very few players in NHL history of that stature that haven't won Stanley Cups, and
go Gallardi, go Gallardi, go Gallardi, go. everybody.
This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS. Jeff Patterson and Irfan Ghaffar are in the midst of their final rink-wide Vancouver for the season. So, if you're looking for a fuller poll dissection of Game 7 between Edmonton and Vancouver, we invite you to check out Rink-Wide Vancouver. Blake and I will be back on Tuesday's edition of Sekeres and Price and take you through the whole summer. 223 days ago, it begins with an 8-1 win over the Edmonton Oilers. Brock Besser scores 4 goals. Thatcher Demko makes 26 saves for the shutout. Alas, neither of those gentlemen play in the final game of the season, a 3-2 loss to the Edmonton Oilers. And Blake, I'll just leave everyone with this thought. It was a successful season for the Vancouver Canucks. Despite the disappointment tonight, the frustration tonight, this was a very good year for the Canucks. And we haven't been able to say that very often in the last decade. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.